This is the international news on Atlantic Television Network. First, the headlines. Renewed conflict in disputed RBA region claims 32 lives. Israeli offensives during weekend campaign killed 3 journalists. Rescuers to dig vertically to reach trapped workers. Cargo ships with 12 on board sinks off Black Sea coast. President Biden says ceasefire between Israel and Hamas is not peace. Prime Minister Albanese said Chinese warship acted dangerously. And now to the rest of our stories from Africa. The party of jailed opposition leader Ousmane Sonko said Sunday it was sponsoring another candidate for the February presidential election just days after Senegal's Supreme Court effectively blocked Sonko's own bid. Election authorities have refused to provide Sonko with the sponsorship papers that need to be submitted by early December. On Sunday, the YouTube channel of Sonko's Pastef party said it now would sponsor the party's number 2 politician, Bassirou Diomaye Faye. In making the announcement, the party said Faye is the candidate that Pastef will sponsor, but specified that Sonko's candidacy has been maintained. Sponsoring the candidates, Bassirou Diomaye Faye in no way implies an abdication of the candidacy of President Ousmane Sonko, the party said in a communique released Sunday. Everyone knows him well enough to know that to his last breath he will fight without compromise. To sponsor the candidates, Bassirou Diomaye Faye is to defeat the regime's strategy of rotting and launch one of our project's many cards into the race. Faye, a tax and property inspector, is the opposition party's Secretary General. In April, he was arrested on charges of spreading false news, insulting a magistrate, and defaming a constituted body after making comments on social media. Like Sonko, he is also now facing a slew of other criminal charges that the party believes are politically motivated. Those include calling for insurrection, undermining state security, and plotting against the authority of the state, among others. Incumbent President Macky Sall ended years of speculation in July when he announced that he would not seek a third term in the office. The move came after Sonko's supporters launched months of protests that at times turned deadly. The ruling party has since coalesced around Prime Minister Amadou Ba as its candidate of choice. Sonko placed third in the last presidential election in 2019, drawing wide support from younger voters. In the years since, Sonko has accused Sall and his government of pursuing criminal charges in an effort to sideline the opposition's future political aspiration. In June, Sonko was acquitted on charges of raping a woman who worked at a massage parlor and making death threats against her. But he was convicted of corrupting youth and sentenced to charities during the voter registration period, which they said were orchestrated by the National Election Commission to favor Tshisekedi's ruling coalition. The commission has denied the accusation, promising a fair election. In a bid to do whatever it takes to remain in power, this regime has intelligently put in place a complex system of electoral fraud and corruption, Matata Ponyo said in a speech on Sunday night. He said the best strategy for the opposition was to back a joint candidate. Following the consultation held in Pretoria, Moise Katumbi emerges as the candidate that would lead the opposition ticket, represented by 4 major parties and groups that took part in this discussion, he said without naming the parties. In line with the discussion of my party, I want to announce that I'm dropping my bid in the presidential race of December 20th in favor of Moise Katumbi, he said, calling on other parties to back Katumbi. Martin Fayulu, one of Congo's main opposition leaders who launched his campaign on Sunday, had also sent representatives in the west of the country, told press on telephone on Sunday night. Heavy fighting Sunday in a disputed region claimed by both Sudan and South Sudan killed at least 32 people, including a UN peacekeeper, authorities said. The civilians and a Ghanaian soldier serving with a peacekeeping force died when unknown gunmen attacked 2 villages in the southern part of Abyei administrative region, local media reported. The South Sudanese radio station iRadio Juba quoted Abyei Information Minister Bolis Kosh as saying 32 people were killed and 20 others wounded, but the clashes have now stopped and the situation calmed down. Intercommunal and cross-border clashes have escalated since South Sudan deployed its troops to the contested territory in March. The peacekeeping mission there condemned the troop deployment, saying it would create untold suffering and humanitarian concerns for civilians. International soldiers were sent to Alil and Ramameh countries as part of the UN Interim Security Force for Abyei to help quell the growing conflict. The Security Council last week voted unanimously to renew UNIFSA's mandate until November 15, 2024. Earlier this month, the UN Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa, Hannah Sewa Tete, warned that the unprecedented 7-month war between Sudan's army and a rival parliamentary force was getting closer to South Sudan and the Abyei region. The UN says more than 9,000 people have been killed since the conflict erupted in mid-April, displacing millions of people within Sudan and into neighboring countries. Sudan and South Sudan have disagreed over control of the oil-rich Abyei region since South Sudan gained independence from Sudan after a 2005 peace deal ended decades of civil war between Sudan's north and south. The deal called for both sides to settle the final status of Abyei through negotiations, but it has never been implemented. The head of a prominent media institution in Ghana-based Committee to Protect Journalists said the weekend deaths raised to 48 the number of journalists and media workers it had confirmed killed in the region since the October 7 Hamas attack on Israel and the subsequent Israeli offensive. The CBJ, whose list covers journalists killed on both sides of the conflict, are those. On Sunday, Bilal Jadala, a journalist and the head of the board of the Press House Palestine, a non-governmental organization, was killed and his pharmacist brother-in-law was seriously wounded. His sister and other relatives told. The list of those killed is Reuters journalist Issam Abdallah, who was killed in Lebanon near the border with Israel on October 13th. In addition to Jadala, 2 freelance journalists, Alsuna Slim and Sari Mansour, were killed on Saturday in an Israeli assault on Buresh refugee camp in the center of the Gaza Strip. The relatives and it would look into individual cases at a later date. It was also said to make every feasible effort to mitigate civilian harm. The Press House Palestinian says on its website that its overall objective is to contribute to developing an independent Palestinian media that reflects the values of democracy and freedom of expression and its principles. Health officials and 31 premature babies in extremely critical condition were transferred safely Sunday from Gaza's main hospital and will go on to Egypt while overtook Sunday and took its 25 crew members hostage, officials said, raising fears that regional tensions heightening over the Israel-Hamas war were playing out on the new maritime front. The Iran-backed Houthi rebels said they hijacked the ship over its connections to Israel and would continue to target ships in international waters that were linked to or owned by Israel until the end of Israel's campaign against Gaza's Hamas rulers. All ships belonging to the Israeli enemy or that dealt with it will become legitimate targets, the Houthis said. Mohammed Abdul Salam, the Houthis' chief negotiator and spokesman, later added in an online statement that the Israelis only understand the language of force. The detention of the Israeli ship is a practical step that proves the seriousness of the Yemeni's armed forces in waging the sea battle, regardless of its cost, he added. This is the beginning. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office had blamed the Houthis for the attack on the Bahamas-flagged Galaxy Leader, a vehicle carrier affiliated with an Israeli billionaire. It said no Israelis were on board. The ship's Japanese operator, NYK Line, said the vessel had no cargo at the time of the hijacking. Its crew members are from Philippines, Bulgaria, Romania, Ukraine, and Mexico, NYK said. Japan on Monday confirmed the hijacking. Chief Cabinet Secretary Hirokazu Matsuno said the Japanese government was doing its utmost for an early release of the crew through negotiations with Houthi rebels, while also communicating with Israel and cooperating with the governments of Saudi Arabia, Oman, and Iran. You are watching the international news on Atlantic Television Network. We return after this break. Welcome back. This is the international news on Atlantic Television Network. Now the rest of our stories. Arab and Muslim ministers called on Monday for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza as their delegation visited Beijing on the first leg of a tour to push for an end to hostilities and to allow humanitarian aid into the territory. The delegation, which is set to meet officials representing the permanent members of the UN Security Council, is also piling pressure on the West to reject Israel's justification of its actions against Palestinians as self-defense. The official holdings meetings with China's top diplomat Wang Yi on Monday are from Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, Indonesia, Palestine, and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, among others. The extraordinary Joint Islamic Arab Summit in Riyadh this month also urged the International Criminal Court to investigate war crimes and crimes against humanity that Israel is committing in the Palestinian territories. Saudi Arabia has sought to press the United States and Israel for an end to hostilities in Gaza, and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the kingdom's de facto ruler, guided Arab and Muslim leaders to reinforce that message. The summit also demanded an end to the siege of Gaza, access for humanitarian aid, and a halt to the sale of arms to Israel. India and Australia are set to hold talks focused on bolstering their strategic defense and security ties on Monday in New Delhi. Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong and Defense Minister Richard Marles arrived to meet with their counterparts for the second India-Australia 2-2 dialogue, where they are expected to discuss regional and global issues, according to a statement from India's Ministry of External Affairs. Both sides will also exchange views on shared priorities for strengthening multilateral and multilateral cooperation, the statement said. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh would hold a bilateral meeting with Marles, who is also the Deputy Prime Minister, India's Minister of External Affairs. So, Amanyam Jaishankar will take stock of ties between the two countries with his counterpart Wong on Tuesday, according to the statement. The talks come a few weeks after India hosted United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken and U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin in New Delhi, where both countries underlined their commitment to boosting security ties and reaffirmed their support for a free and resilient Indo-Pacific region. India and Australia are also part of the Quad, an alliance that includes Japan and the United States, which aims to counter China's rising influence in Asia. The two countries upgraded their relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership in 2020 when they signed various agreements to strengthen defense ties and cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. Earlier this year, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese arrived in India on a 4-day visit where he held talks with his Indian counterpart Narendra Modi and praised the two countries' progress in ties, including scientific and technological cooperation and military exercises. Rescuers blocked from reaching 41 trapped construction workers shifted Monday to an attempt to dig towards them vertically after the 9-day effort in mountainous northern India has been stymied by debris and technical glitches. The trapped workers are healthy and receiving food like nuts, roasted chickpeas, and popcorn through a pipe, Deepa Goa, government spokesperson, said. Oxygen was being supplied to them through a separate pipe, she said. The rescuers are creating an access road to the top of the hill from where the vertical drilling is to start Monday evening, said Devendra Patwal, a disaster management official overseeing the rescue efforts at a site in Uttarakhand state. From the vertical direction, drilling into the tunnel will take a few days and debris could fall during the digging, Patwal said. The workers have been trapped since November 12 when a landslide caused a portion of the 4.5-kilometer tunnel they were building to collapse about 200 meters from the entrance. Uttarakhand is dotted with Hindu temples, and highway and building constructions has been constant to accommodate the influx of pilgrims and tourists. The tunnel is part of the Chadam all-weather road, a flagship federal project connecting various Hindu pilgrimage sites. About 200 disaster relief personnel have been at the site using drilling equipment and excavators in the rescue operation. The horizontal drilling efforts involved a machine breaking through rocks and debris to create a space to insert pipes through which the trapped workers could crawl out. But it was hot from the top of the hill could also cause debris, but officials say they will use a technique designed for unstable ground. The rescuers will need to dig 103 meters to reach the trapped workers, nearly double if they carried on digging from the front. Officials said the efforts to reach the workers from the horizontal tunnel will continue. North Korea on Monday denounced the United States' potential sale of missiles to Japan and South Korea, calling it a dangerous act that raises tension in the region and brings a new arms race, state media reported. In a statement carried by the KCNA news agency, the North Defense Ministry said Pyongyang will step up measures to establish deterrence and respond to instability in the region, which it said was caused by the United States and its allies. Japan plans to buy 400 Tomahawk missiles from the United States, part of its biggest military buildup since World War II. The Pentagon said on Friday the United States Department has approved the potential sale in a deal valued at $2.35 billion. The United States has also recently announced approval of a possible sale of Sidewinder missiles and Standard Missile 6 block is to South Korea. We warned that the more United States profits from indiscriminate arms sale, the more it would have to pay for the security crisis, North Korea's statement said. The statement comes as North Korea is preparing to launch a spy satellite. South Korea Defense Minister Shin Won-sik said on Sunday the launch could take place as early as this week. Stanley warned North Korea to squarely face the reality of the international community, seriously condemning its illicit activities in one voice, and immediately suspend the plan to launch a military spy satellite now under preparation, South Korea's Joint Chief of Staff said in a statement. The South Korean military said the satellite launch would be a provocation and a violation of UN Security Council resolution that banned the North's use of ballistic missile technology. Pyongyang has said it would demonstrate more offensive and overwhelming counteraction capabilities, citing what it called military threats from the United States and its allies. North Korea said on Wednesday it had successfully conducted static tests of a new type high-thrust solid fuel engines for intermediate-range ballistic missiles, raising speculations over another missile test. South Korea's National Security Council convened a meeting on Monday and said it will bolster the military's readiness to immediately respond to any provocation by the North. South Korea's military warned North Korea not to go ahead with its planned spy satellite launch, suggesting Monday that Seoul could suspend an inter-Korean peace deal and resume frontline aerial surveillance in retaliation for a launch. North Korea failed in its first two attempts to put a military spy satellite into orbit earlier this year and didn't with a vow to make a third attempt in October. South Korea officials said the delay was likely because North Korea is receiving Russian technological assistance and that the North could conduct a launch in coming days. Senior South Korean military officer Kang Ho-pil urged North Korea to cancel its third launch attempt immediately. Our military will come up with necessary measures to protect the lives and safety of the people. South Korean and U.S. authorities were monitoring North Korea's moves. Lai Ching-te, the frontrunner for Taiwan's presidency, named on Monday, Taipei's being made on Monday afternoon. Taiwan's foreign ministry said it had accepted her resignation. I believe that Bi Kim is definitely an excellent person when it comes to Taiwan's diplomatic work today, and she is a rare diplomatic talent in our country, Lai added. Rupert Hammond Chambers, president of the U.S. Taiwan Business Council, who has known Xiao since the 1990s, said she was a formidable politician and would add much-needed diplomatic and security heft to Lai's ticket. Bi Kim's relationship in D.C. will be invaluable to President Lai if he is elected the country into conflict and economic ruin. There is a great deal of impetus for asking him to involve this problem, but it is a very difficult problem, Marcos said. The junta's post-coup crackdown and opponents gave rise to a resistance movement that has been growing in strength. ASEAN has banned the top generals from attending its meetings and pro-democracy fighters. Marcos, citing analysis of the recent escalation, said the junta had already lost support from its own military. He said the humanitarian cost of conflict had grown exponentially in recent years, with the Philippines also impacted with its citizens amongst victims of the European Union, but one of her allies warned areas that backed its opponents that they would be getting less public funding. Sandu warned before the election that pro-Russian forces in the country, particularly fugitive business magnates in Ilan Shaw, had funneled money into Moldovans to buy voters. After Sunday's run of votes, Sandu's Party of Action and Solitary Control, Moldova's second city, Balti, elected the representatives of her party, a group that calls for Moldova to cultivate favorable ties with all its neighbors, defeating a rival from the Russia-friendly Socialist Party. An independent won in Comrades, a town in the south where one of Shaw's allies had won a regional vote earlier this year, and in Calaras, a past candidate will now head the local council. Aeon Seben, running under a party he founded, was though the president's supporters suggest he may hold pro-Russian sympathies. Igor Gursu, Speaker of Moldova's parliament, said those areas that returned councils hostile to Sandu's pro-European drive risk getting none of the generous fundings provided in the past 3 years by the European Union. Those who voted for the representatives of bandits and those countries that do not wish us well will bear responsibility for their choice, he said on television. Those localities that voted for mayors with clear pro-European views will be the first to benefit from the support coming from Union countries. Shaw was sentenced in absentia to 15 years in prison for his part in a huge bank fraud. A party bearing his name was later outlawed by the Constitutional Court. Shaw supporters were barred from running under another party banner on security grounds 2 days before the election in Europe, said in a report after the first round that the decision to bar some candidates had limited voters' choice and resulted in uncontested races in some smaller localities. A Turkish cargo ship with 12 crew on board sank off Turkey's Black Sea coast during a storm on Sunday, and authorities have been unable to make contact with the crew. Interior Minister Ali Yelikaya said on Monday. The captain of the Turkish-flagged Kafkametla had reported on Sunday morning that the ship was drifting towards the breakwater of Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky on Sunday demanding rapid changes in the operations of Ukraine military and announced Defense Minister Umerov priorities were set. Zelensky said in his nightly video address, "There is little time left to wait for results. Quick action is needed for forthcoming changes." Zelensky said he had replaced Major General Tatiana Ostachenko as commander of the Armed Forces Medical Forces. The task is clear, as he had been repeatedly stressed in society, particularly among combat medics. "We need a fundamentally new level of medical support for our soldiers," he said. This, he said, included a range of issues: better tourniquets, digitalization, and better communication. Umerov acknowledged a change on the Telegram messaging app and set as top priorities digitalization, tactical medicine, and rotation of servicemen. Ukraine's military reports on what it describes as advances in recapturing occupied areas. Ukrainian Commander-in-Chief General Valery Zaluzny is headed into a stalemate and has called on Kyiv's Western partners, mainly the United States, to maintain levels of military support. Ostashchenko was replaced by Major General Anatoly Kazmierchuk, head of a military clinic in Kyiv. Her dismissal came a week after Ukrainian news outlets suggested her removal, as well as that of others, was imminent following consultations with paramedics and other officials responsible for providing support to the military. An orphaned Ukrainian teenager who was taken to Russia last year during the war in his country returned home after being reunited with relatives in Belarus on his 18th birthday Sunday. Bogdan Yemokin was pictured embracing family members in Minsk in photographs shared on social media by Russia's children's rights ombudswoman Maria Belova. Andriy Yermak, the head of the Ukrainian president's office, confirmed that Yemokin had arrived back in Ukraine and shared a photo of him with the Ukrainian flag. Yermak thanked UNICEF and Qatari negotiators for facilitating Yemokin's return. Yemokin's parents died 2 years ago before Russia invaded Ukraine. Early in the war, he was taken from the port city of Mariupol, where he lived with a cousin who was his legal guardian, placed with a foster family in the Moscow region, and given Russian citizenship, according to Ukrainian lawyer Katerina Bobrovska, who represents the teenager, and his 26-year-old cousin Valeria Yemokina previously told press that Yemokin repeatedly expressed a desire to go home and had talked daily about getting to Ukraine to his relatives. Yemokin was one of thousands of Ukrainian children taken to Russia from occupied regions of Ukraine. The practice prompted the International Criminal Court in March to accuse Russians, issued warrants for Putin and Vova Belova's arrest, saying they found reasonable grounds to believe the two were responsible for the illegal deportation and transfer of children from Ukraine. The Kremlin has dismissed the warrants as null and void. Vova Belova has argued that the children were taken to Russia for their safety, not abducted, a claim widely rejected by the international community. Nevertheless, the Children's Rights Ombudsman announced in a November 10th online statement that Yemokin will be allowed to return to Ukraine Belova told reporters in April that Russian authorities caught Yemukin near Russia's border with Belarus on his way to Ukraine. The ombudswoman argued that he was being taken there under false pretenses before he was allowed to leave Russia. Lawyer Bobrovska described an urgent need for Yemukin to return to Ukraine before his 18th birthday, when he would become eligible for conscription into the Russian army. The teenager had received 2 official notices to attend military enlistment office in Russia, although officials later said he had only been summoned for record-keeping purposes. Last month, Ukraine's human rights ombudsman Dmitry Libanets said in his Telegram channel that a total of 386 children have been brought back to Ukraine from Russia. Ukraine will watch on Atlantic. You are watching the internet. Welcome back. This is the international news on Atlantic Television Network. Now the rest of our stories. Verdicts are expected Monday in the trial of hundreds of people accused of membership in Italy's 'Ndrangheta's organized crime syndicate, one of the world's most powerful, extensive, and wealthy drug trafficking groups. The trial started almost 3 years ago in the southern Calabria region, where the mob organization was originally based. The 'Ndrangheta's quietly amassed power in Italy and abroad as the Silicon Mafia lost influence. The syndicate now holds almost a monopoly on cocaine in southern Italy. The organization has also bases in North and South America and is active in Africa, Italian prosecutors maintain, and 'Ndrangheta's figures have been arrested in recent years around Europe and in Brazil and Lebanon. The trial took place in a specially constructed high-security bunker, part of an industrial park in La Masia, Terme. The bunker is so vast the video screens were anchored to the ceiling so participants could view the proceedings. More than 320 defendants are charged with crimes that include drugs and armed trafficking, extortion, and mafia association, a term in Italy's penal code for members of an organized crime group. Others are charged with acting in complicity with the 'Ndrangheta without actually being a member. The charges grew out of an investigation of served 19 years in Italian prison for his role in leading what investigators allege is one of the 'Ndrangheta's most powerful crime families based in the town of Vibo Valentia. Based almost entirely on blood ties, the 'Ndrangheta was substantially immune to turncoats for decades, but the rank of those turning state's evidence are becoming more substantial. In the current trial, they include a relative of Mancuso's. Several dozen informants in this case came from the 'Ndrangheta, while others formerly belonged to Sicili's Cosa Nostra. Shakira is to stand trial in Barcelona on Monday to face charges that she failed to pay 14.5 million euros to Spanish income tax between 2012 and 2014. The hips don't like Colombian megastar, who also has a second tax fraud investigation pending with Spanish authorities, has vowed to fight what she called false accusations. Shakira says she heard as her work led to a nomadic life. She rejected a settlement offer from the prosecutor's office to close the case and is expected to testify on Monday in the first of 12 hearings scheduled until December 14. The prosecutor's office is seeking an up to 8-year prison term and to claim back the taxes it says she owes. It alleged that Shakira spent more than half of each of the years in question in Spain and was therefore ordinarily resident in the country. It also said testimonies during the course of the trial, which is due to start at 10 a.m. Spanish authorities have pursued other major celebrities over tax evasion, including soccer players such as Portugal's Cristiano Ronaldo, Argentina's Lionel Messi, and Brazilian Spanish player Diego Costa, all settled and paid large fines. However, Spain's Supreme Court last month upheld the acquittal of Bayer Leverkusen coach Xabi Alonso in another tax case. Alonso had refused to settle and eventually won at the trial. Survivors of Nazi atrocities joined young Jewish activists outside the Paris Holocaust Memorial Saturday to sound the alarm about resurgent anti-Semitic hate speech, graffiti, and abuse linked to the Israel-Hamas war. The impact of the conflict is drawing increasing concerns in France and beyond. Thousands of pro-Palestinian and left-wing activists rallied in Paris and around Britain on Saturday to call for a ceasefire, the latest of several such protests in major cities around the world since the war began. France is home to the largest Jewish population outside Israel and the US, and Western Europe's largest Muslim population. The war has reopened the doors to anti-Jewish sentiments in a country whose wartime collaboration with the Nazis left deep scars. Some 100,000 people marched through Paris last week to denounce anti-Semitism, as the Senate 96 said the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7 stirred up her memories of World War II. Massacres like that I have lived through, she said at the Paris Holocaust Memorial. I saw people die in front of me. Her sister was among them. They brought her to the gas chamber in front of my eyes, she said. Most of Senat's family members died. She survived 17 months in Auschwitz, Birkenau, and other death camp, and made it back to France at age 17, weighing just 32 kilograms. Senate was speaking at an event organized by Jewish youth organization Hachoma Hatzai, at which teenage activists draw parallels between what is happening now and the lead up to World War II. They held a sign saying, "We will not let history repeat itself." France's Interior Ministry said this week that 1,762 anti-Semitic acts have been reported this year, as well as 131 anti-Muslim acts and 564 anti-Christian acts. Half of the anti-Semitic acts involve graffiti, posters, or protest banners bearing Nazi symbols or violent anti-Jewish messages. They also include physical attacks on people and Jewish sites and online threats. Most were registered after the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7, the military said. Serge Klaasfeld, a renowned Nazi hunter and head of the Sons and Daughters of Jewish Deportees from France, noted that anger at the Israeli government's actions often get mixed with anti-Jewish sentiment. While he is concerned about the current atmosphere in France, he sought to put it in perspective. Certainly, there are anti-Semitic acts in France, but they are not an urgent level, he said. He expressed hope in the wisdom of the two communities who know how lucky they are to live in this exceptional country. France has citizens directly affected by the war. The initial Hamas attack killed 40 French people, and French Defense Minister Sébastien Lecornu is shuttling around the Middle Ages backgrounds, planning a silent march in central Paris to call for peace between Israeli and Palestinians. They will march from Arab World Institute to the Museum of Art and History Judaism. Like France and some other countries, Britain has seen protests to demand a ceasefire each weekend since the war began. Organizers from Palestinian organizations and left-wing groups said rallies and marches were held in dozens of towns and cities across the UK on Saturday. Some staged sitting protests in busy railway stations, while hundreds of people demonstrated outside the North London office of opposition Labour Party leader Keir Starmer. His refusal to call for a ceasefire and instead to advocate a humanitarian pause has angered some members of the left of centre party. Britain's opposition Labour Party said on Sunday its foreign policy chief David Lammy was visiting Israel and the West Bank and meeting with Israeli President Isaac Herzog and the Palestinian Authority Deputy Foreign Minister Amal Jadou. Lammy will also meet Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen, opposition leader Yair Lapid, and leader of the Israeli Labour Party Merav Michaeli, the statement said. Labour has been divided over its position on the Israel-Hamas conflict, with nearly a third of the several of its policy team quit over the vote. Starmer-like Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, the United States and the European Union has called for humanitarian pauses to help aid reach Gaza rather than a ceasefire, which they say would allow Hamas to regroup after its attack on October 7. Lamy said if elected to government, Labour would be tirelessly committed to diplomacy required to help deliver a real, not rhetorical path to two-state solution. Labour is far ahead in opinion polls before a national vote expected next year. The ultimate end to conflict we all want to see won't happen simply by affirming that we want it to happen, Lamy said in a statement from Israel. Hard diplomacy is required with all governments in the region to deliver a longer pause immediately to respond to the shocking humanitarian emergency, secure the release of hostages so cruelly taken by Hamas, and as a necessary step to an enduring cessation of violence. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak will announce a new science initiative to bring together work on developing climate-resilient crops as his government hosts a global food security summit in London on Monday. The summit's a joint initiative between Britain, Somalia and the UAE. The Children's Investment Fund Foundation and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is due to be attended by representatives from more than 20 countries. We must take action to address the underlying and often unseen causes of global food insecurity, Sunak said. From the impact of Russia's war in Ukraine to the effect of major natural disasters on food production, alongside our partners, the UK is playing a leading role in finding solutions to some of the greatest global challenges of our time. Britain said the new virtual science hub will be led CGIA, a global research partnership which unites international organizations working on food security and would link UK scientists with research initiatives to develop crops that can withstand the impacts of climate change and are more disease resistant. The British government will also publish details of a new international development policy or white paper on food insecurity